In 1903, a French colonial survey team crossed into the southern Algerian Sahara on a mapping expedition that was supposed to last 6 weeks. They came back after 11. 2 of the surveyors were dead. One was in a sanitarium in Marseille within a year. And the report they filed, a 340-page document with photographic plates, geological cross-sections, and hand-drawn measurements, was printed in a limited run of 200 copies and then quietly removed from every public library it had been distributed to. The reason given at the time was that the report contained measurement errors that needed to be corrected. The corrected version never appeared. What the surveyors had found scattered across an area roughly the size of Belgium were petrified tree trunks. Not unusual on its own. Petrified wood exists across the Sahara and has been documented for centuries, but these were different. The diameter of the largest specimen they recorded was 42 meters. That is 138 feet across. A single tree trunk wider than most city blocks in Paris, wider than the entire span of the Arc de Triomphe. And they did not find one. They catalogued 47 of them. Today, almost no one outside of a small circle of researchers has ever heard of this survey. The original copies are scattered, 3 known to exist in private collections, and the photographs are believed to have been destroyed in a fire at the Bibliothèque de l'Institut Géographique in 1962. A fire that, conveniently, only damaged the colonial-era archive room and left every other section untouched. This is the story of what those surveyors found, why the official explanation makes no scientific sense, and why a forgotten 1903 expedition might be the single most important piece of evidence for a theory that mainstream history refuses to acknowledge. The theory that we are not the first advanced civilization to walk this planet. If you want more videos like this, the ones investigating the things that don't fit the official timeline, hit subscribe right now and turn on the bell. We post deep dives into forbidden history, lost civilizations and Tartaria research every week. Now let's get into it. To understand why the 1903 survey matters, we need to start with what the Sahara actually is. The image people carry of it, endless dunes, a desert that has always been a desert, is wrong. The Sahara was green, not millions of years ago, within human history. Roughly 6,000 to 10,000 years ago, the region we now call the Sahara was a savanna. There were lakes, rivers, forests. Hippos lived in what is now central Algeria. Cattle herders left rock paintings showing scenes that look more like the Serengeti than the dust-choked plain that exists there today. This is called the African humid period. But here is what the textbook version does not explain. The forests that died in the Sahara during that period were not made up of trees that could grow 42 meters in diameter. The largest trees that grew in that region were acacia, baobab relatives, and various drought-resistant hardwoods. None of them gets anywhere close to the size of what the 1903 survey documented. The largest tree currently living on Earth, General Sherman in California, is about 11 meters in diameter at the base. The trees Marchand documented were, on average, 3 to 4 times larger than anything currently alive on the planet. So what were those trees? When did they grow? And how did they end up petrified, lying flat across a region the size of Belgium, in patterns that, according to the surveyor's own diagrams, suggested they had been deliberately felled? The expedition was led by a man named Etienne Marchand. He was 38 years old, a graduate of the École Polytechnique, with a decade of field experience mapping French colonial territories. He was not a fringe figure. He was a hard-nosed surveyor with a reputation for precision. His expedition included a geologist named Paul Renard, a photographer named Henri Vasseur, and a team of 12 local guides recruited from Tuareg communities. They departed in late March of 1903. For the first 3 weeks, the expedition went exactly as planned. Marchand's notes from this period are routine, almost boring. Then, on the morning of April 19th, 1903, one of the Tuareg guides led Marchand and Renard to a site that the locals called, in their language, the place of the giants who fell. Marchand initially assumed this was a folktale. The guide said it was real, that he had been there as a boy, and that white men had not seen it before because no white man had ever asked the right question. What Marchand wrote in his journal that evening is one of the few passages from the expedition that has been quoted in subsequent research. He described approaching what he initially thought was a rock formation, a series of long parallel ridges running across the desert floor. As he got closer, he realized the ridges were too uniform, too straight, and the surface texture was wrong. Bark, petrified bark, visible in cross-section where the formation had cracked. He was looking at a tree lying on its side, partially buried in sand, but exposed enough that he could measure it. He paced the diameter at the thickest section. Then he had Renard measure it independently. The two measurements agreed within a metre of each other. 31 metres across, at the base. That was the first one. Renard later recalled that Marchand was pale, and that when he finally stood up, the only thing he said was a single sentence in French. Translated, it reads, "We have found something that should not exist."